Minister Jaishankar, India has more of a multiple choice mindset. Would that be right? From non-alignment to, I think you may have called it, or somebody else called it, all alignment. So you can pick and choose alliances, but you can also pick and choose topics. On Russia, for example, you still buy Russian oil. Is that okay with your counterpart from the US? Everything is, your relationship is fine, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want?
Okay. First of all...
I mean, you're sitting next to each other.
No. So. First of all, delighted to be here. And I couldn't find a better set of people to be with on the stage. So thank you for whoever put us all together. Your question, do we have multiple options? Answer is yes. Is that a problem? Why should it be a problem? If I'm smart enough to have multiple options, you should be admiring me. You shouldn't be criticizing. Now, is that a problem for other people? I don't think so. I don't think so, certainly in this case and in that case, because, look, we try to explain what are the different pulls and pressures which countries have. And it's very hard to have a unidimensional relationship. Now, again, different countries and different relationships have different histories. If I were to look, say, between the US and Germany, it is rooted, there's an alliance nature to it. There's a certain history on which that relationship is grounded. In our case, it's very different. So I don't want you to even inadvertently give the impression that we are purely and unsentimentally transactional. We are not. We get along with people, we believe in things, we share things, we agree on some things, but there are times when when you're located in different places, have different levels of development, different experiences. All of that gets into it. So life is complicated, life is differentiated. And I think it's very important today not to reduce the entire complexity of our world into very sweeping propositions. Yeah. I think that era is today behind us. Yeah. So I agree very much with what Tony said, which is good partners provide choices. Smart partners take some of those choices. But sometimes there will be choices on which you say, well, I think I'll pass up on that one.
It's a very good point, which brings me to the BRICS and the rise of middle powers, because that is one of the shifts that we see today. To what extent do you think that is a challenge to the West, or maybe that can be sort of the bridge, especially in a world where we will see continued competition between the US and China? And I'm going to ask Minister Jaishankar first, but I'd love for both of you to come in as well.
I thought maybe the BRICS one, you wanted the US.
After you, Jack, please.
Look, again, I think it's important to go back to how it began. The BRICS started in an era where Western dominance was very strong. The premier gathering of the world was the G7. And you had a number of significant powers in the world who felt that, well, they were not part of the G7, but maybe they also brought value to the table by sitting and discussing with others. So in a sense, you had a collection of these countries. It was originally 4. South Africa joined later. If you look at it, it's a very interesting group because it's geographically as disparate as it can be. Yet it is bound by the fact that these discussions we've had over a decade and a half have been very useful for all of us. Now, like any product, you test it in the market at some point. We tested it last year and asked people, so how many of you want to join BRICS? And we got almost 30 countries who were willing to join BRICS. So clearly, if 30 countries saw value in it, there must be something good we've done. So I think it's important today to make a distinction between being non-West and anti-West. Mm-hmm. I would certainly characterize India as a country which is non-West, but which has an extremely strong relationship with Western countries, getting better by the day. Not everybody else necessarily in that grouping might qualify for that description, but the contribution the BRICS has made, if one looks at the G7 and how it evolved into the G20, I think in a way those additional 13 members who came into its bigger grouping, 5 of them are BRICS members. The fact that there was another group which was meeting regularly and discussing and debating, I think certainly was a input into the expansion of the G7 into the G20. So I think we did a service to the world.
Yeah. Minister Jaishankar, what is the view from India? What would you, if you had some advice for your colleagues, what would you tell them?
Well, I don't have advice for my colleagues, though I think all of us follow the enormous efforts which Tony is putting in right now. But look, the way we look at it, there are different dimensions, different elements to this. Number one, we must be clear that what happened on October 7th was terrorism. No caveats, no justification, no explanation. It was terrorism. Number two, as Israel responds, it is important that Israel should have been very mindful of civilian casualties, that it has an obligation to observe international humanitarian law. Number three, the return of hostages is today imperative. Number four, there is a need for a humanitarian corridor, a sustainable humanitarian corridor to provide relief. And eventually, there has to be a permanent fix, a long-term fix. Otherwise, we're going to see a recurrence. And I think today, certainly India has long believed in a two-state solution. We have maintained that position for many decades. And I think today many more countries in the world today feel not just that the two-state solution is necessary, but it is more urgent than it was before.
Inshallah, as they would say in the Middle East.
So I'll just take a minute.
1 minute, yes.
I think a very large number of countries, especially of the global south, believe that terrorism shouldn't be countenanced or justified. But they equally strongly believe that a two-state solution should not be delayed. These are not choices. These are both musts. And unless we are able to address both these issues, we are not going to really solve the problem.